This is the story of a group of filmmakers on a special mission. The British state handed them the task of promoting public transport. But many of the filmmakers went beyond their brief. They wanted to follow their real dream, their passion for film. They were striving for success. This is their journey, through post-war Britain to international fame.
Summer in the sweltering streets, dry crusts of stone smoking in the sun, parched throats and hot pavements, sultry atmospheres and blistering tempers. There's only one answer. Leave it. Take a holiday. Where? Oh, as far as possible. Somewhere near Land's End, where we can enjoy the sun, where we can cool our souls in the sea, get sand in our shoes and fresh air in our lungs. Somewhere like Devon or Cornwall.
This is British Transport Film's vision of Britain. The sights of a nation about to change beyond recognition. More than 50 years ago, Billy Williams travelled the length and breadth of the country as a young camera assistant for British Transport Films.
To pass from the lowlands to the highlands of Scotland is to cross a border of country which marks almost as sharp a difference as that between Scotland and England. Here is the real north, the dark, true, the tender north.
Billy was part of a talented and well-funded team.
I was an assistant cameraman in those days, but I had ambitions. It was a great adventure. I mean, filmmaking is always an exciting job because every job takes you somewhere else with a different subject. So you involve yourself in what you're doing and just do the best you can.
He's watching some of his earliest camera work, a gathering of the clans in Edinburgh.
It was a multi-camera shoot because this is a very big occasion. And I can still remember being on Princes Street with huge crowds. It's a wonderful memory, seeing these images again.
British Transport Films was created after World War II to promote the use of Labour's newly nationalised transport system.
This was one of the absolutely kind of emblematic reforms of the Labour government, and one of the ways in which, you know, Britain in the 40s was different from anything that had happened before.
At its height, 800,000 people were employed by British Transport. They were all paid by the state. Their work was to be explained and celebrated on screen. The new film unit had enemies. Some Conservative MPs called it expensive propaganda. But cinema was at its peak, and the British Transport Commission had a message for the public and for its staff.
Film is the single medium of mass communication. They're deliberately sending particular messages. They're sending this kind of social democratic message, you know, we're all in it together, Britain is ours, it belongs to all of us, we're proud of our industry, we're proud of our transport network that makes that work. take pride in it, join it.
Industries come, industries go. Transport goes on. Now, atomic power is going to change things. Well, transport will change with them. Because people will always need transport, and transport will always need people. But whatever happens, wherever they are, whether it's rail, road, canals, docks, or ships, young chaps coming into the transport family will get a real kick out of their jobs. They can bet their best pair of football boots on that, and jolly good luck to them.
A seasoned documentary maker, Edgar Anstey, was appointed to head the unit. In the 30s, he made pioneering films, working alongside the father of British documentary, John Grierson. It was a background where film could be a vehicle for social change. Edgar Anstey preferred to work behind the camera, though he was filmed pretending to be a passenger in one of the unit's first films. He had a gift for spotting young filmmakers. For his new recruits, it was the break they were looking for.
Well, I'd just come out of the RAF and I was looking for a job, and I went along to the office and I met the production manager and he took my name. So it was my first job in over 2 years. And I was lucky, I suppose.
I was not at all interested in transport, not at all. This was somewhere to make films, and the atmosphere was terrific. We were crowded out with people, and everybody was enthusiastic.
In one of their first films, Ocean Terminal, they seized their chance, recording an era of transport when trains, buses, lorries, and the docks handling the big private liners were owned by the government.
We had a great passion for the nationalised industry. All of us working there, we believed in the nationalisation of transportation. It was about the comings and goings of the great ocean liners, the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, the Ile-de-France. And we were there for some time, and we were able to go on all these ships, and they were magnificent.
It's a public relations film about Southampton docks, but the stars are the luxury Atlantic liners.
Arrivals and departures invoke power and unfold splendor. The departure of the greatest liner is a story of a great queen and a retinue of self-important tugs that haul on cables, cross her bows at speed, and when she majestically turns, exert pressure against her side.
We did a sequence of the Queen Elizabeth leaving Southampton, and we had the camera on a tug called the Calshot, and the captain of the Calshot was one of the characters in the film. And we were buzzing around in this tugboat, taking wonderful shots of the Queen Elizabeth leaving, because she'd slowed down for us. And we were indulging somewhat, and eventually over the radio came a message from the captain to say, if you finished your filming, may we please proceed to America?
Films like this were shown in schools, local halls, the workplace, and sometimes as support films in cinemas. Two years later, the unit followed a high-speed steam journey from King's Cross to Edinburgh.
At platform 5, the Elizabethan, a special express of the holiday season, summons its strength. And the time to depart marks an ending for some, but for many, a start.
With its rhyming commentary, the film was awarded a cinema release. The unit was building a reputation.
As time gets on, so people get thinner, unless they take lunch or midday dinner. So the kitchen car prepares to fill the waistcoat of Jack and the waistline of Jill.
Billy Williams was part of the film crew. For the first time in half a century, he's going back on board an A4 steam engine. Now it looks nostalgic, but the film celebrated the technology of the day. Anstey and his team were celebrating a modern vision of high-speed transport.
Sir Nigel Gresley designed his A4 with the speed of a greyhound, the strength of a bull. But when he put fire in her stomach, he taught her to burn with a furious thirst for water.
The cold air was coming in on from the side, and when the fireman opened the firebox, the hot air came out. Everything was alive, and it was just something I've never forgotten.
It's imprinted in my mind because it's a unique experience. You know, there's nothing else like it, with a combination of wind and cold air and hot air and speed, noise, movement. It's all there on the footplate, and it's like being on a live animal.
It's absolutely wonderful. Feel the heat coming out of that as he's opened the firebox. Burning heat coming out of there, and it just brings back wonderful memories for me.
Here's Driver McLeod, mighty old hunter, chasing each minute of time's silent thunder, riding down seconds over the straight track, chasing the seconds lost rounding the curved track, coaxing each delicate petal of power out of steam's suddenly blossoming flower. Here's muscular Mungo, hard-handed toiler, who keeps water flowing round the tubes of the boiler, keeps up the pressure, heaves tons of coal on, makes sure his driver's got enough steam to roll on, bends till his back aches, shifts as his feet work, rhythmically swinging to make boiler heat work.
It's a very good sequence, and it stands up today as well as it did 55 years ago. I think it's very well shot, very well edited. It's full of movement, it's alive. And of course, we were alive because there was so much movement on that footplate. It was very difficult to hold the camera steady. And that is transferred to the image, I think.
Sometimes the unit had to act quickly, especially when transport workers were battling against extreme conditions. In 1954, a cameraman, Bob Painter, was called to Cumbria.
We were put in a truck, we'd driven some miles in the dark, this is. And the last bit we had to walk through the snow, and then we found this locomotive.
Digging went on throughout the night by the light of the silvery moon. Helped out by pressure lamps, of course.
A young film editor, John Ledyard, put Bob Painter's material together.
They had some very good night shots with the lighting. They had these paraffin lamps and who had tracking shots as they were digging into the snow, which was so deep, right into so the line was about 2 feet down.
Besides, it's always a comfort to know if we've still got a line down underneath the snow. Oh, there you are. I knew we had. Good.
When we came up from the south with the camera, they took the mickey out of us, something rotten, you know, we weren't tough like they were working. But little did they know that we'd worked with throwaway men before. We knew the road.
As we kept the work going in shifts, night and day, changeovers and feeding had to be organised. No restaurants on the Stainmore summit.
And after a couple of days, they took pity on us and they had a whip round. They gave us their sandwiches and things, and it all finished up rather fun. We were lucky. It was a nice, sunny, bright morning, crisp and clear, and then this loco came and you could hear it getting up steam, you know, and the wheels spinning and chuffing away, and then suddenly it came hurtling along the line that had been cleared and just went straight at this big drift of snow, and the snow went everywhere, and it was a fantastic sight.
That's what makes the film memorable, I think, is that one scene with all the people waiting to clear the snow after the train had gone through.
The film had two purposes: to entertain and to celebrate work.
When you get a cab full of snow and steam and smoke and spume, all you want is to stop. But the diggers want loose snow to work on. So you just have to keep going.
This actually could be a kind of Russian propaganda film from kind of, the mid-20th century or something. It could be like a bit of communist sort of political propaganda. If the signs on the train were in Cyrillic and the workers were kind of wearing different hats, big furry hats, and they were swigging vodka between each bout of kind of shoveling snow, this would be a brilliant Stalinist propaganda film.
Staff at British Transport weren't the only employees to feature in the films, and when the cameras followed shoe factory workers on their annual outing, it was more than just a day trip.
You have to remember when you're watching them, the films are done for a reason. There's a director behind them, there's a writer. There is also a kind of political point to them. It is propaganda, but of a particularly kind of benign and, I think, reasonable kind.
There's Mr. Hackett. I've never known him come on his own. Every year he turns up with his gramophone and as many relations as he can muster. There are plenty more up and down the train.
Director John Krish was capturing reality, but there was a product to promote as well.
It was, of course, made to encourage other factories to take the train. I mean, it's an advertisement. It's a commercial for British Transport for the day out.
Reservations for Mrs. Morini and Mackie.
Now that the train was at the platform, we had very little time. That's me. I'm running. I'm going through the crowd there. There I am. I'm running to get on it, followed by a cameraman with his camera on a tripod, needing shots of them getting on the train.
After the tower, we went through the tidied-up bomb damage in the City of London and towards something we all knew and had feelings about, St. Paul's Cathedral.
They were very warm-hearted people, and we had to be very careful filming this day out for these people who saved hard for it and who valued being out together.
The camera crew appeared on screen several times.
It didn't worry me at all, because in a way it's proof that we were there as part of the day out. The secret of making it work was not to be apart from it, but a part of it. And the crew, the cameramen, the assistants, the sound crew were determined to have a good day out and to be as much a part of the day out. And so seeing the crew in the shot seemed to me just to reinforce the fact that we were all there together. Without realizing it, I'm in the middle of the shot on the bridge, where I had absolutely no intention of being in the shot. There I am, shameless. Joining in, but that's how the day was. All of us joined in this day out from this factory, and it was wonderful.
It was one day, not long ago, London had to say goodbye to her last tram. Sometime, someday, it had to come. And some people were glad to see the back of them. And some of us were sorry they were going.
By the early 50s, the team was some of Britain's most successful filmmakers. In their work, the future was always bright. But the scrapping of the last London tram caused a mutiny in Edgar Anstey's unit.
Edgar called me into his office and said that the tram is coming off the road at the end of next week. And this was on a Friday, and he said, we have got hardly any library material, and there aren't many trams left because they were phased out gradually.
We'll remember the rattle and the clang and the sway, and how snug it was to be inside when it was raining outside.
Edgar called me into his office on a Friday afternoon, and I said, well, we must make a film about the trams before they disappear. And he said, no, there's no film in it. And I said, but we must, they're going to go. He said, no, not interested. There isn't a film to be made about the last tram. Just go and photograph the chairman shaking hands.
On the Monday morning, I got to the office, my assistant, just the two of us going to go out with a camera and do the library stuff. And John arrived and said, do you mind if I come with you? He said, I've written a small script, perhaps we could make a little movie out of this library material, which is what he did.
The way they burn them till there's nothing left but a charred skeleton. You'd think they were afraid of ghosts. Ghosts of old trams running the rails at night. Oh well, in 36 hours he'll be a bus driver.
The sense of freedom during that week was something that has never been repeated. It was just wonderful. We were doing something very wrong and very right all at the same time.
We climb on the car when the journey begins, and we make for the first vacant seat. For all other people we don't care two pins, so long as their comfort's complete.
The only thing I knew I wanted in the film was an old couple taking a kind of trip down memory lane on a tram. I went to a Derby and Joan club in Lewisham and found a couple and made sure they weren't married because I didn't want them sitting there not speaking to each other.
The London Transport Listers, when they saw it, they said if you show that movie, everyone's going to be up in arms and say it was a mistake to take the tram. It was so nostalgic and so, it was really touching.
You sit close together and spoon all the way.
Edgar Anstey was not impressed.
He sacked me. He put his name on it as producer and did nothing. He was all for pleasing his masters, there's no question about that. He never put a foot wrong. What I don't understand is how he couldn't see that the older the film got, the more valuable it becomes as a social document of the time.
Among his staff, opinion about Edgar Anstey was divided.
It kept the thing going. I mean, there was a lot of opposition in those days from various factors, about government money being wasted on the likes of us. But, he kept the thing on course.
I mean, he had this aura of experience of the documentary movement. He was a bit like a father figure, but he didn't have any dynamic. One didn't feel a great inspiration.
Edgar probably didn't have a reputation for making great creative films, but he was a good practical filmmaker. And he was the person with the problems dealing with the railways and the various crises and financial situations that arose from time to time. And he protected us from that. If he hadn't been a film producer, he would have made a very good politician.
Anstey's team often got one kind of transport film into cinemas, the travelogue.
I suspect that an awful lot of people watching these things are just talking, stuffing themselves with sweets, staring at the ceiling and waiting for the main feature. If you're waiting for some Hitchcock film or something and this comes on, you're just going to be twiddling your thumbs, I think, and waiting for the main feature to begin.
Our grandfathers and the retired colonels from Pune and Delhi and Allahabad watched W.G. Grace stride out to the wicket, and Jessup hit a six that broke the clock in the pavilion on the college ground.
You see the cricket matches and you think, oh gosh, that shows how old-fashioned it was in the 50s. But what you forget is that it would have seemed intensely old-fashioned then, as well as now.
And thou shalt keep the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labours, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labours out of the field.
Transport hardly gets a mention, but with car ownership still low, most of the audience had only one way to get to the locations.
We go off with a 16mm camera, very small crew. Usually no script as such, but a few ideas. But the whole purpose was to encourage general public to travel on trains to go to these places.
And after lunch, silence falls over the landscape. But up in the town comes the sound of a train, as holidaymakers from Guildford and Glasgow come to the sun and the seaside again.
It's a picture of Britain where the sun always shines.
They took quite a long time because we always waited for the right weather, which was usually sunlight. Looking back on the travelogues, I think a lot of them don't really stand the test of time because they're so slow and rather dull.
When I was a lad, my doctor once said to me, "There's nothing wrong with you that a blow on the coast won't cure."
In 1957, a film crew was sent to the Lancashire coast to make another travelogue with the usual orchestral score.
This is a coast, and this is the country behind it, where the wind from the west blows free.
But a different music, spread by television, was sweeping the country. Led by jazzmen like Chris Barber, Edgar Anstey allowed a recut of the Lancashire material. The result was one of the unit's most popular films. This is a snapshot of Blackpool at a time when the country had never had it so good. By the time Chris Barber was shown the film, it was already edited, so the music had to fit the shots.
The scene in the swimming pool was a case where I had to pick a tune that could have some like cymbal splashes for people diving into the water. And it worked out exactly right. It was very difficult. I could see a pattern there, mathematically speaking, and it seemed to work out. I wish I knew whether the film had actually achieved a result of getting people to use the train more going to Blackpool or anywhere, holidays and so on. I wonder.
The film shows a new age of leisure.
You do see what we would now call teenagers. They're more independent, and that's because there's been an economic boom, and they've got this full employment, and they've got money, which their parents wouldn't have had at the same age. And those are the people who are obviously going to drive a lot of the social changes of the 50s and 60s.
Those changes were reflected in one of the unit's finest films. In 1961, a young director, John Schlesinger, joined the team for another attempt to capture what looked like reality. A day in the life of Waterloo Station.
You watch Terminus, and it's like a film from a different planet. It's kind of classic, early 60s reportage. It's not, there's no intrusive commentary telling you what to think. It doesn't patronize the viewer. It feels very modern, actually, in the sort of way that it just presents you with reality, or what appears to be reality, kind of unvarnished.
Jamaica man, where you gone? Come eat the fish and we can sing a song.
Bob Painter filmed immigrants looking worried and suspicious.
They weren't very happy about us being there with cameras because they thought we were, using the footage for publicity, racist purposes and saying, we shouldn't allow this immigration to go on like. And it got a bit ugly at times. Didn't exactly come to blows, but it got close to it on occasions. The police had to be involved to give us some sort of protection.
The star of the film is a little boy. But he isn't as lost as he looks.
I was only 5, and I was more concerned initially with the toy seal and the Rupert Bear magazine than anything else. It's only when an hour or so passed of sitting on the suitcase that I realised my mum wasn't there, and I got desperate.
What's your name, son? Matthew? What's your other name? Matthew Perry. And who are you with, your mother?
Matthew's mother, Margaret Perry, was an actress related to John Schlesinger. She told her son to wait for her at the station while she was filming nearby.
There you are, Matthew. She won't be long now. She'll be a minute.
Here is a special announcement. Will Mrs. Perry, who has lost her small son Matthew, please go to the station master's office, which is alongside platform 16.
I wasn't an innocent lost in the middle of a train station. I was put there, and it was quite manipulated on that level. The length of time I was there to make me feel desperate, I think, was probably John seeing my emotions were so good on camera that he pushed it a bit further.
I would cry for you. And I didn't hear you.
It's such a juxtaposition between obviously choreographed bits of filming and real, very real things going on. And I can imagine the whole thing as a storyboard as being incredibly complex. But there again, I imagine also John was very well prepared for it. He was prepared for luck, and chance.
But it wasn't just luck. Other shots were carefully staged. John Schlesinger, on the right of this shot, appeared in his own film, pretending to be a businessman. These convicts being escorted to a train were actors, hired for the day. And this confused old lady in the ticket office was an actress too.
I think there were one or two cynical people who possibly said it's impure filmmaking if you have to resort to reconstructing. I think probably 3/4 of Terminus was just as it happened, probably more.
In the year of Terminus, an estimated 5.5 million people watched at least one British transport film, but the unit's biggest test was just ahead. (1963) was a key moment for the railways and the film unit.
At the moment, we are carrying about 40 million tonnes a year.
Richard Beeching was the new boss at British Railways and wanted to close a third of the lines.
Where men have to go and leave us, we shall give them good notice. And during that notice, they will be able to travel free.
Rail staff, including these workers, went to special screenings to be told about the cuts.
It will remove the sense of uncertainty that has affected railwaymen for a good many years now, and it will give them...
The film was made by Edgar Anstey himself and rushed out in time for the announcement.
We took Dr. Beeching in our stride. He was a rather likeable man, and he became quite a good friend of Edgar's. I think people respected him. He had a job to do, and we were able to work with him.
It's a lovely illustration of the kind of paternalistic, maybe slightly patronising tone that was very common in politics then. It's basically about a man in a suit looking into the camera and saying, this is what we're doing, this is why, that's an end to it.
Think of the cost of it, and think too of the competing lorry going from door to door.
The film unit held special screenings around the country. Alan Wilmot, the projectionist, still shows films to retired staff.
I listened to it all those years ago, but it was
very bad, obviously, for staff who could immediately see we may lose our jobs. I reckon there was quite a mixed opinions, mainly what's going to happen.
The workers were seeing their future, and it didn't look good.
For the chairman to come out and have a film specially made for the staff, that was really quite revolutionary. We were never convinced by what Beeching said about looking after the people and so on. It was that deathly hush in the audience. Well, what on earth is going to happen to him?
They didn't succeed in the PR task. You know, people didn't take to Beeching's cuts in a way that he'd hoped. And one reason, I think, is because he wasn't a very good communicator. That Beeching film is really the death knell for the film unit, and in some ways, actually, for the railways.
So what would Edgar Anstey do? The heyday of rail was over, but his unit kept on filming.
To the clear chalk stream which runs out of Hanger Woods come the jaunty grey wagtails, who love and live by water.
After Beeching, the unit developed its expertise in quiet films about the countryside.
It was rather refreshing to get away from so many films connected with direct-to transport. Nice to be dealing with wildlife, and from my personal point of view, I thought it was a great pleasure.
In 1965, they made Wild Wings, about the Wildfowl Trust in Gloucestershire, run by the naturalist Peter Scott.
For thousands of years, they'd been the quarry of man. And yet, you know, until quite recently, very little was known about them. He's beginning to count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The film got a cinema release in Britain and the USA.
Oh, this is brilliant. We've just passed the gloomy sequence in the middle of the winter when the poor creatures were just surviving.
John Ledyard edited the film. It became a huge success and made no reference to transport.
And the fabulous mandarin duck, a relation of the wood duck. They're great fighters during the courtship period, but they make very devoted pairs.
Wild Wings won the unit its biggest prize in the 1966 Oscars. British transport films had reached the top in Hollywood.
We were delighted. Yeah, I don't think we were jumping around. I remember we all went to the pub that evening and had a drink.
For 2 decades, British transport films had celebrated a golden age of public transport and showed British audiences a reflection of their own country.
They're fantastic barometers, actually, of social change. So what people are wearing, the way they talk, they do feel like slices of life. And the way that people relate to one another, the kind of surroundings, the greyness, the sootiness, the sort of spirit of conformity, actually, and the collective spirit. And I think to a historian that is just incredibly valuable.
Edgar Anstey retired, making a farewell appearance as a tourist in one of the unit's films. He died in 1987. His unit made 700 films and won 200 awards. But by the 80s, there was no future for British transport films. Some of his young filmmakers went to the top of the movies. Among them was Bob Painter, who filmed The Train in the Snow. He became a Hollywood cinematographer and shot the video for Michael Jackson's Thriller. 9 years after Terminus, John Schlesinger won a Best Director Oscar for the feature film Midnight Cowboy. And Billy Williams, who rode on the footplate for Elizabethan Express, won an Oscar for cinematography in Gandhi.
There were some very good people working at British Transport, you know, cameramen and directors, and the background of working there was very helpful. I mean, when you look at some of those old films, it's a social document. It's part of history, isn't it?
let off some steam about our programmes here on BBC4, or to subscribe to our weekly email newsletter, visit the BBC4 website. Next tonight, all aboard the Elizabethan Express.
He's passionate and funny.
Well, don't get cold now. Tuck yourself in.
One film with 3 stories about the changing romance of Mills and Boone.
These books are not about male domination at all, but about female power.
I think you're wonderful.
I have been told that.
Get off!
Consuming Passion, coming soon to BBC4.
Never mind diamonds or pearls, steam is where the real glamour is at. BBC4 boards the 1954 service from King's Cross, London to Waverley, Edinburgh, the Elizabethan Express.
Summer is singing in streets again, and summertime's travels have now begun. The cuckoo sings of the burnished grain, and long journeys gilded by the sun.
We'll soon have the holiday passenger traffic with us. But between us, I think we can deal with all their...
The superintendent of operating speaks in the ears of his timetable brains, who sit in their offices calculating how to fit in fast summertime trains. Cudgel your brains for summertime trains. Draw in a train for the passengers waiting to hear cuckoos singing a Highland fling. Draw in a line for a non-stop to Edinburgh over the Tyne. And so the new service comes into its hour. The morning is June, the weather is fine. At King's Cross Depot of Motive Power, the drivers come in to sign on the line.
Bob Marrable, top-link train driver, who's always a punctual arriver, wears boots, footplate size, has colour-light eyes, and engine oil in his saliva. Rolly Russell, his mate in the team, often sprays out his tonsils with steam and treats gravel rashes by damping down ashes and using the paste like cold cream.
The 9:30 non-stop train to Edinburgh, the Elizabethan, will leave from platform 5. Passengers for Dundee and Aberdeen travel in the front of the train.
At King's Cross, the coaches are filling with passengers. Porters are willing to carry their cases and find them their places for a tanner or even a shilling.
The Elizabethan will leave from platform 5. Passengers for Dundee.
Like a general gathering forces, the chef's checking up his resources. All the pains in your belt Mr. Wheeler can melt and roll your eyes round with his sauces. Though the guard may look calm and laconic, his obsession with time is quite chronic. But a punctual start binds the train to his heart. The relationship's purely platonic.
At platform 5, the Elizabethan, a special express of the holiday season, summons its strength. And the time to depart marks an ending for some, but for many, a start. the engine goes with a swing and a shine past the engine sheds, there's a man on the line who gave her that shine. He's the fitter. His was the skill, his the hands that uncoupled her rods, stripped her gear, packed her glands with his firm, skillful hands. And the boy was one of that servicing crew who gave care and craft to each thread on each screw and made it fit true. They're the fitters, the men with the cunning to bring through each big end and piston, valve, spindle and spring, all that power and swing.
The buffet's archdeacon of elegance serves coffee with impartial sentiments, cigars for the swells, bath buns for blonde belles, and fags for the lads in the regiments.
The passengers sitting at buffet tables, the Howards, the Berts, the Cynthias, the Mabels, enjoying the comfort and ease in their seats, careless of crumbs in turnips or pleats, admire the gleam on the chromium plate, the polish on tables, the unfaded state of curtains and fabrics. But rarely give thought to the long years of training, the practice that taught men in large workshops the best way to take a carriage to pieces and how to remake it better than new. The seats that are sat on had to be made to welcome all shapes. First, the material that mustn't fade or wilt under pressure was cut with a blade skillfully guided, then skillfully sewn, while windows were painted, then carefully scraped, and taps were fitted in shining chrome. Then the seats were upholstered, material bolstered. And while a man was writing a sign, and others were putting that last mirror shine on metal and paint, the seat was finished. And those who ride in its regal embrace can truthfully claim to sit in the pride and work of a king.
As time gets on, so people get thinner, unless they take lunch or midday dinner. So the kitchen car prepares to fill the waistcoat of Jack and the waistline of Jill. Watch them consistently filling the gaps in their faces with food without filling their laps. They wouldn't be eating as smooth in most cars, or ocean steamers, or even some bars. As undisturbed as Robinson Crusoe by the train's motion, they swallow their meats. What in the railways allows them to do so? One of the factors enabling these feats of filling stomachs without filling laps is the state of the track, which depends on these chaps of the maintenance gangs. The chaps who see that the rails are tight in their several chairs, who see that they're straight and on the level, unlike crooks or stairs, who see that the chairs are firmly fixed, that no evil disturbs the sleepers, who see that the gap's not been stretched in the night by clandestine creepers, who see that this very important small gap will not cause any damage by wrapping some diner's first-class Adam's apple in chicken or cabbage, who see that the passengers riding in clover can take meals on velvet and 90 or over,
While the side-slipping countryside changes to town, meadow, sweet, speedwell, charter and gown, dreamlike in boxes, unseen, watchful eyes, path-setting panel, tell us no lies. Watch the trains passing, guide her with care, junction and crossing, points in a pair. With a turn of the wrist, the click of a switch, track circuit magic, vault of the witch, out of York City and on to the north, past Durham, Newcastle, over Tweed to the Forth.
Now beyond York, the Scots crew prepare to relieve the strain on the English pair. No driver of trains is more proud of his Scottish descent than MacLeod. He insists every engine has pipes to each piston and burns in its box for MacLeod. His mate, Mungo Scott's cursed with Bristol, that's as tough as a John Knox epistle. When he kissed a young lass in the dark for a lark, she asked, "Was that you or a thistle?" Nigel Gresley designed his A4 with the speed of a greyhound, the strength of a boar. But when he put fire in her stomach, he taught her to burn with a furious thirst for water. So when she approaches a water trough, watch Farman Mungo doing his stuff. And firemen, relieved of the strain, rest now while the pounding refrain that beat itself into the cells of your brain murmurs along in the voice of the train. God, keep your watch on this world of corridors, coaches, while passengers curled in safeguarded rest are rapidly swirled past the vision of Durham, swiftly unfurled. The Elizabethan goes driving onwards, while buffet attendants or restaurant stewards, performing their corridor service dance, try to anticipate passengers' wants, waltzing through coaches to serve in compartments, while signals are serving the train with clear distance. Sometimes breaking this smooth onward flow, though the home signal's clear, the distance says slow. The regulator slams shut, and MacLeod clamps on the brakes. The loud hiss of steam as the train seems to slow to the pace of a cloud breaks the afternoon task and disperses the dream. At the end of these wires sit men in control rooms, like prompters assisting the course of a play, breathing out words like Arabian perfumes. Too bad there's no record of just what they say. They watch every train that moves in their region of thousands of miles of railway distance,
and try to forestall any slightest suspicion of slack that might make its unholy appearance. But while every passenger knows the importance of his own special train arriving on time, the men in control rooms must weigh in the balance the claims of 1,109.
But the Elizabethans, a particular, special, never more smiled upon non-stop train. Nothing must stop her. The order's official, and lateness could cause operational pain. And at last, the ultimate cause of the slack over the hills far away up the line is cleared. And the train picks up speed on the track through Newcastle City and over the Tyne. But now the express has lost time. She'll be late unless driver Tony and Mungo, his mate, can make up 4 minutes and nearly a quarter on the difficult stretch running over the border.
Here's driver MacLeod, mighty old hunter, chasing each minute of time's silent thunder, riding down seconds over the straight track, chasing the seconds lost rounding the curved track, coaxing each delicate petal of power out of steam's suddenly blossoming flower. Here's muscular Mungo, hard-handed toiler, who keeps water flowing round the tubes of the boiler, keeps up the pressure, heaves tons of coal on, makes sure his driver's got enough steam to roll on, bends till his back aches, shifts as his feet work, rhythmically swinging to make boiler heat work. As they come down from Grant's house, the peak of the climb, they're over the worst.
And she's running on time. Mr. Arnott of Waverley Station has a very high sense of occasion. If a train's a non-stopper, his topper is proper. His Hamburg's for trains of low station.
The Elizabethan that's now arriving at platform 10 in Waverley Station Left London at 9:30 sharp this morning, with mothers, with sons in high expectation, with fathers, with daughters, of pounding the path non-stop from King's Cross in 6 hours and a half. Here Edinburgh stands on its rock by the Forth, singing its welcome to those who come north, where the clans and the heather have fashioned a reason to mingle their blooms in a festival season.
Coming up next tonight, BBC4 dips inside the head of a rather familiar-looking train spotter.